ago. It just depends on this so-called technology. So there was a woman who was surprised at Chug before the service. She wondered what had initiated the lady's change of heart, and she got her answer at the end of the service when the pastor instructed, your assignment for next week is the same as last week. I want you to go out there and love somebody you just can't. We have people that they make it difficult to be around. But if we left this book and we would go over to John chapter 13, I believe it is, we would see that Jesus gives us the greatest commandment, the second greatest commandment. And he doesn't say it's a commandment. And that means we have to do it. And it's to love one another. It's to love your neighbor, is what he's telling us in there. And we need to. We need to love everyone. As Christians, we shouldn't have anything else in our hearts but love. The problem with love is, like that lady in the little joke that I told, if loving everyone was as easy as just giving, it's easy to excel in love. But it's not that easy. We could just hug them and move on. And there's some people, you know, some days, if I had to hug them, I'd hug them and move on. But that's not what, it can be a little bit more difficult than that. Love requires a continual effort in our lives. Love takes, you got to put forth an effort. It doesn't come easy. If I don't put an effort into the love with my wife, our relationship probably isn't. We got to remember that it was Jesus who died on Calvary for us. He gave his life and shed his blood for us on Calvary. So we should love him enough that we want to spend time with him. And you know, love is a big, it's mentioned a lot in the New Testament. Love is a big issue in the New Testament. And as a whole, and we're going to look at verse 16 in just a moment, but he takes this letter, and what he's doing is he's exhorting one another to love one another as brothers, regardless if we like them or not. It may be somebody we run into. Hey, listen, I don't know about any of you, but people are getting more difficult to be around. People are what you say to someone. I told a fellow at Walmart, he pulled into one of those horizontal parking places for the handicap, and he hit the car in front of him twice. And I jumped out of my car because I thought maybe he didn't realize. He jumped out of the car and he looks at me and he goes, yes, and I'll hit you next if you don't shut up. And I'm like, oh, mercy, got to love them. Like, you know, physically go up and hug them. But we have to show them the love of Christ at a time like that. And what's our first response as humans? It's to fight. It's to get to, you know, love is a word that's thrown around more these days than a football in the Super Bowl. Love is just thrown around. It's just a word anymore. It really is to the world, and sometimes even to Christians, it's just that. I love your hair. I love your shirt. I love this. I love that. I love Christmas. I love you. You love me. We're a happy family. That's what Barney used to sing, right? Love, 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 love. Two characters, if you're watching TV, they'll oftentimes mumble something about loving each other. But when they're winning, we love our favorite sports teams. And as a culture, we talk about love. We love a lot of things. We love pizza. We love soda. We love warm spring days. Some people even love my hairdo today. You know, some not so much. But we only love us. You see, with our flesh, we seek pleasure more than we seek the interest of someone else. Jesus didn't do that, though. Jesus sought us. And, you know, we look to Jesus. We should look to see what love is. And love is only love if the actions back up the word. Love shows itself. It's evident when we see Jesus and we see the cross at Calvary. And we know that he hung on that cross. But before that cross, he was whipped and scourged and beaten and just disfigured. He wasn't even recognized. Legion of angels. But he knew that the only way that we could, he stayed. And he begged for our forgiveness on that cross. You see, he doesn't have to say an action more than a word. A true love, a self-sacrificing love. But the way of the world is to put self first. The way of the world is to put self first. Remember that today. It's all about me, okay? It could be about you. I mean, but you have to make it about you. But that's how the world is, Christianity. And instead, we should look to the book of Galatians and remember what Paul says in there, and I'm paraphrasing, but Paul said, for God. So I've got to stop loving myself. I've got to start looking at everything else. I've just got to stay me. It really comes down to that old adage, what would Jesus do? How would Jesus handle this? He would help. He would find out how to do it. So what do? Repay him with kindness. Why would you do that for someone that hates you? Well, Jesus did it for me and I hated him. You see? Now I love him. I understand what he did for me. He saved me from hell. Up in themselves. That's really the way of the world today. And that's what I want to look at here in just these couple of verses that we're going to look at. Look at 1 John with me and look at chapter 3 and look at verse 16. Sorry, I just lost. He laid down his life for us, and we ought to lay down our lives for the brethren. But whoso hath this world's good, and seeth his brother have need, and shutteth up his bowels of compassion, not love in word, neither in tongue, but in deed and in for him. Let's go to the Lord in prayer this morning, and we'll take a look at these verses. Amen. First, because we love the brethren, is I perceive to be that's going to be extensive. And he laid down his life for us, and about Cain slew his brother. Cain slew his brother before. Cain, while we were yet as bad about him. Think back on, because you didn't. Jesus knows no life. There was no genuinely. And I am behave itself unseemly, with all shall fail. Whether there be tongues, they shall see. But when that which is perfect is come, you can't get a better love in there. It's 13 of a true love. 1 John. Look at verse 17 with me. Bowels of compassion from him now dwelleth the love. And I'm not talking in a physical. If you think of that picture that I described earlier, that as the Son of God, he not only had flesh, he had to be whipped and scourged and be buried to arise again, to defeat death and hell. Jesus gave everything. This is a love thing out of love. That's a Jesus saw our need. He really possessed it without a perfect lamb that was blameless. Imagine being the only one that he would leave us. It would have went that way. Our only stop after, like love meets needs wherever it finds them. Doesn't mean you're condemned because you didn't love somebody that way. Fine in God's eyes. But if you've got the resource to take care of getting what you need back to you, you're obligated to reach out. I'll read it for the sake of time here, but James chapter, one of you say unto them, depart in peace. Even so faith, see, when I look at that verse, it's almost like the ability to meet a situation that the reason you're able to take care of it is God gave you the resource. I'd like to give them that extra piece of meat I have in the freezer, but if there's a need right now with someone else, real love never closes its heart. Jesus didn't close his heart to us. Still a need for a Savior. Experience that kind of genuine love today. No, it doesn't work like that. There's no buts. We have God. You see, God's given us everything he's given us is for his glory. Inconveniently, somebody come across your life that needs a little bit to get you off the road. We use it, and we use it to show the love of God. Math problem. Ability plus we're accountable to God to use the resources he gave us. See in here is brotherly love is chapter 3. Look at verse 18. My little children, great to underline this verse, but you're a dear brother to me, and ox on their car or whatever it is, then give them the center in heaven on everything that's here. Trust them. I come down to this and church, and I'm telling you what, this guy, I can call him right over. We had over the winter, we had an ice storm, and people didn't even know. He literally drove almost an hour further them get running water back in their house. And you can't tell me they didn't get to see God through that. And what is this stuff, and I just want to share it with you. Where we're from, because you ought to act like you're a child. I struggle with this some days. I do. And just to show you the other years, I thought he was off the walls. I wasn't a hayride out. I didn't understand how Eastern Plain living was normal out here. But come forward a couple of years later. He's on the road traveling with work a lot. And we start the prison ministry. And he says, what does the King James Bible say about that? And then it just progressed from there. And I've been there ever since. The Lord saved my wife there. He saved my son there. He called us into the ministry there. Love. He's just a wonderful person. He makes you laugh whenever you're around him. But yet when people have a need, he'll drop everything he has and he'll help. And you have to be perfect. But imagine if we could just do that. If God gives us the to God, we're going to be accountable to God. Genuine love is oftentimes seen in the action of mothers. We sometimes read in the news, mothers will sometimes lay there. All they had to do is just have the child taken through a surgery procedure, and their life would be okay. Maybe a little bit of a risk, but instead they decide to have the child and give their life. That's a sacrificial love. That's a love like Jesus. 11, John says here, for this is the message that ye heard from the beginning, that we should love one another. This is the message which you have heard from the beginning. He's meaning the beginning of your Christian life when we're simple truth, and you should start to learn and practice that the first day as a Christian. As you grow and you mature, start putting that love into action. God's love flowing between the world and Christianity. We shouldn't have churches that look like the world. We should stand out. I don't understand why those people would do that. Why would they bring me food to my door? Well, I don't even go to that church. To give my resource. That's love. One who claims to believe in Christ. But it doesn't just stop in here. There's a world. Y'all have seen the power. You might not have the resource, but you could pray that God would. If you don't show the love of Jesus to people, there are tons of people who love others and would do anything to help people that don't believe in Jesus. One without the other. If you proclaim to have Christ and don't show the love of Christ, I've got to ask you how much you really have Christ. Why are you holding back on a love, giving it back, and not letting someone else experience that love? Do you know how many broken families there are? People who think that the world is hopeless because nobody loves them. And yet, do you truly believe that Jesus says he is who he is? Do you believe he's the Son of God? I'll ask you this. Do you love others today? Not just by word, that claim to heed what's in these messages here today. If we truly love others, then they should. What are you doing to show others the love of Christ? What are you holding back that someone needs today at the house? Maybe it's, you just never know in your world that you live in. Where you go, the banks, I don't think anybody goes to the bank anymore, do they? But I thought that was the coolest time to go to the bank. I live out my childhood dreams and walk in with a mask on and nobody yelled, hit the floor. But we come to you with humble hearts and thankfulness today, Lord. And Lord, this is something that we all struggle with. Lord, myself included. And